Good morning and welcome to Eternity Speaks. I'm your host, Reverend Bill Eggleston. I hope that everyone's had a great week and is doing well. This week, I'd like to talk about the importance of helping one another. We all find ourselves in difficult situations at times. Sometimes those situations may even seem hopeless altogether. We struggle to get by. We struggle to understand. We even struggle just to survive sometimes. But no matter how much we struggle, it's very important to understand that we are not alone. God is always with us. Even though we don't always realize it, He's always working for our best interest in the background. Um, Sometimes those difficult times that we find ourselves in are a very necessary part of our life plan. We're meant to go through tough times in order to learn uh, and for our souls to develop. Uh, So I got a new computer finally, and I'm trying to work through it and figure it out. This episode might be a little bit odd, a little bit of touching around here, trying to figure this one out. So kind of bear with me with that. Uh, with each one of our lives, yeah, I'm talking about reincarnation here. I'll get into that later. We learn new lessons that are important in our development and in our life plan. We meet new people and reconnect with those that we knew in other lifetimes. Uh, some of you may recall a recent video that I posted on Facebook where I talk about how I'm thinking of starting a teaching series where I speak about the lessons that I've learned about the life of Jesus and how everything really works, as opposed to how it's portrayed in the Bible. I'll go more into topics like reincarnation and life plans later in that series. But after that shameless plug, I'll get back to today's show. Uh, Helping one another is one of the basic foundations of the teachings of Jesus. We're meant to love one another, to help each other whenever possible. Uh, I've always believed that if you have the ability to help someone, you have the responsibility to help them. Now, I'm not saying that we got to spoil each other to the point that we miss out on life's important lessons. Uh, After all, we are meant to struggle at least a little bit. That's how we learn. But something as simple as paying for someone else's order in line can make a huge difference in somebody's day. Um, for example, the hospital that I work for used to give out these $10 cafeteria vouchers for your birthday every year. Um, the stipulation of it was once you once you gave them that coupon, anything if your order didn't tally up to $10, you didn't get the change back. It just kind of disappeared. So what I used to do is when I'd place my order, I'd I'd start adding. If it did come up to $10, I start adding items from the person behind me, um, and whatever was left. If it was $6 and I'd add $4 worth of their stuff, and then they paid the difference. Um, and I used to do that all the time, and the the smiles that I got from that, and even hugs sometimes because I am in the South, and I guess that's kind of a thing here. Uh, people hug a lot down here. I'm not used to that. Being from New York, I'm not used to that. We just didn't really hug up there. Uh, but the smiles and the joy that would bring, uh, it was just you just there's not enough of that these days. Uh, sometimes when I would do that, it actually inspired the person to pay for the meal of the person behind them. Perfect strangers doing kind things for one another. Each time I did this year after year, um, it inspired other people to take care of one another and to spread the love. Um, the last time I did that, I paid for. I had my stuff and I was able to cover all of the stuff of the person behind me, and that person in turn ended up because they didn't pay for anything. They bought the meal of the person behind them. And that person, by that time, I was on my way, but they were still talking about paying for. It kept going back farther and farther and farther. I don't even know how far it went, but it made a big difference. A lot of people smiled that day with just a simple gesture like that. Just a simple, hey, I got some change. Let's add your stuff to it. You hear about that all the time. People doing that in line at like McDonald's and things like that. They'll pay for it, but they never get to see the result of that. uh, with what I had done. It was nice because I could see it. Um, I actually had people tear up sometimes. Uh, but it's you gotta understand love and kindness like that it's an infectious thing. Um, when you're happy, everyone around you is happier. When you smile, others smile. How you present yourself in the world and how you choose to act and how you choose to live your life affects everybody around you. Whether they're if they're in a bad mood and you're in a good mood, you can bring them out of that bad mood. Just as if you're in a bad mood, you can actually affect other people too because you'll bring them down. So it's important to stay in a positive attitude and just spread love and kindness as far as you can. You never know. Uh, you never know how your actions are going to affect others. Um, you may be gone by the time it really hits them and they get that message. Uh, it's just love's a beautiful thing, and we need to spread that as far as we can. Uh, and at this point in the show, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Barry and our special guest, St. Augustine.
Good morning.
Morning.
Fancy meeting you here on a Sunday morning.
I know, right?
Uh-huh. I think it's going to be very interesting this morning. St. Augustine, for those of you that may not be totally familiar with him, he passed in around 420 AD. So he was present right after Nicaea, where Constantine tries to do some work laying out the Gospels. Augustine was one of the most prolific Christian writers ever. Wrote hundreds of books, equivalent of books. Of course, he didn't have printing presses or anything. Having written a few myself, I'm pretty amazed at what the guy accomplished. But anyway, I think that I know he's here. We've been chatting a little bit before the show, and I think you're going to enjoy this. So anyway, I'm going to bring in St. Augustine, and we'll see what he has to say. Good morning, everybody. It is certainly nice to be able to speak with people once again. When I walked the earth, I tried my best to bring individuals the writings that I felt Jesus had spoken. Many of my writings I found were not very accurate. In those days, there were many Gospels. Now, I know that most of you are only familiar with the 27 or so that are in the New Testament. There's a reason for that. There were actually well over 300 early Gospels that were available to us to be able to check things out and to try to find information about our Lord. It was a very strange time for Christianity. Believe it or not, by the early 300s, Christianity was split. There were people that thought that Jesus was simply a prophet or a spokesman. There were those that thought he was Son of God. There were actually many people that were rioting, and people were killing each other over the argument. In addition, until the early 300s, Christians were heavily persecuted. Constantine was the first Christian emperor. He called Nicaea in 325, and I was born just after the conference. God sent me back to try to make his teachings understandable to the people. The Gospels, as they were selected, contained much information that was not correct. Now, I want you to imagine just how the information in the Bible came about. Christ passes around 30 AD. For almost 300 years, the words that he spoke were passed on, often in stories. There were no really early writings about him. When our Lord spoke, Nobody wrote his words down. It was impossible. Jesus only taught for 3 years. Many of the people that he spoke to thought he was crazy. He was speaking about something that was totally new. The Romans were worshiping many gods, and they truly resented anyone that spoke of a single deity. Anyone that spoke of a single deity was often killed. Stop and think of the risk to those early followers of our Lord. After the crucifixion, people started to write down and record what they thought Jesus said. Memory often fails individuals. Some people remember things one way and some people remember them another. Think about how, when you are telling individual stories, how they change. You can tell a person a story, and when that person passes it on, you may not even recognize it. Many people felt that the simple teachings of our Lord should be exaggerated so that more people that would remember them and more people would be amazed by them. Now, when I became baptized, the initial work had been done about trying to put together the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke were selected because they were all similar. It's hard to believe selection of Gospels could be based on political decisions, but they were. There were controversial Gospels at the time. They were even made illegal by the church because they wanted to bring a specific message to the people. They wanted the people to have to rely on the church to go to heaven. Now, when Jesus spoke, that was further from nothing could have been further from the truth. He told everyone that if you live a good life, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Don't show anger, don't show hatred. Raise your family, love your wife, love your family, and just basically live a good life. Pass on his words, speak to others about living good lives, and then you'll join him in heaven. Keep in mind that Jesus never even spoke of hell. Hell is a concept that the church came up with to create fear. You see, the Romans often governed by fear. People knew that if you disagreed with them, you would receive their violence. The church started to think the same way. If you feared a burning hell, and in those days, the ancients thought of fire as one of the most dangerous and torturous things you could have. If you did not follow the tenets of the church, then you'd go to hell. You had to rely upon the church. Today, that's apparent in some religions as well. Sometimes that has not changed. There are religions that will tell you that they are the only ones whose members go to heaven. Well, I can assure you that's not correct. Let me get back to some of the writings that I did. I relied on many of those stories that were told. I tried to sort out what I thought, and I would receive messages from my angels and guides, and I would try to write about them. I wrote many revelations. Revelations brings incredible fear to people. Many thought that the world would end and only those that were favored by the church would go to heaven. Well, that's not true. Revelations doesn't have anything in it that's true. Revelations was a document of fear. I had doubts about it, but my opinions would change throughout my life. I would learn more. I'd get more messages from my angels. And yes, I spent my life writing about Christian doctrine. Many of my works were destroyed, but there are some that still exist. My works were then passed down or passed up to others, however you want to look at it. Subsequent church members would look at my writings and say, oh, this miracle had to be much greater. Could not have been that simple. So we'll just add a little bit more to it. Later monks would say, oh, I think I know what Jesus meant here. Let me change these words and let him understand what I think he said. Now, if you think about this going on for 1,000 years, think about how many changes could take place in the Gospels. Along comes King James. He said, oh, no, this isn't possible. I think Jesus spoke with an English accent. Do you really think Jesus said thee and thou in his teachings? He didn't. He spoke the language of the time. There have been 4 or 5 translations. It was translated to Greek, to Latin. And then the church decides that they are going to continue to preach in Latin. Well, as time progressed and the Roman Empire failed, fewer and fewer people could understand the words in Latin. The church actually did not want the people to understand what they were saying. They wanted the people to rely upon the church for translation. And only through the sacraments of the church would they be allowed to enter the gates of heaven. I mean, somebody even came up with the idea that you would have to pay to get out of purgatory. That was something the church came up with to raise money. Throughout time and history of the church, there were many of its leaders that really could have cared less whether their parishioners went to heaven or not. The church, through the years, amassed great power and influence. Many of the political leaders would not act without the authority of the church behind them. Now, other religions came along. Muhammad comes and he forms Islam. Members of the Islamic faith began to think that Christianity was very bad. The Christians decided that they should resort to violence in the Crusades to clear the Holy Land of the Muslims. Even though that was their land, what difference did that make? Many of the supposed Christian leaders are residing, would you believe, in the lower levels of heaven. Only God knows what is correct. Only God knows what words are reflecting accuracy towards his teachings. Now, I don't want you to believe that all churches are bad. They're not. Churches do much charity work. Churches provide for social interaction between individuals that hopefully have mutual goals. What you must do is understand that no single church preaches the exact teachings of our Lord. Now, that may surprise you, or maybe many of you have wondered just what was behind some of the writings. I want you to know this. God's words are some of the most simple commands that you will ever hear. Avoid anger, avoid hatred, live a good life, follow the golden rule. And you know pretty well sums things up for him. If those of you out there would follow those simple commands, you would never ever have to ask for forgiveness because you wouldn't be breaking his rules. Now, everybody has broken the rules in the past. God knows that. He's very forgiving. But what you need to do from this day forward is decide that you are going to follow his simple commands. Those simple commands will assure that upon your passing, and everyone is going to pass. None of you are immortal. Your souls are, but this human body that you're in today is going to pass. It's going to decompose and it's going to turn to dust. But while that is taking place, your soul will be residing in a magnificent heaven. How you lead your life will help determine what level you'll be put into and how you will enjoy the wonders of heaven. Now, don't complicate things. Jesus never spoke in parables. That's another thing you need to understand. He spoke to the simple and he spoke to the uneducated. If he had spoken in parables, nobody would have understood him. They'd have thrown rocks at him. He had enough problems. People spit at him. They did throw rocks at him because they didn't want him speaking against the many deities that the Romans were worshiping. So I just want to thank you. I always enjoy talking to people, and it's very difficult coming through from the other side. Many people read my writings. Many people have trouble understanding them because I wrote them, some of the stuff in a pretty complicated manner. I fell for the belief that things had to be very complicated in order to make an impression. That is not true. Go out, live a simple life, and you will understand exactly what true happiness is. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come back. I know that many of you were not familiar with me, and they said, who is this guy that Barry's going to be speaking? But I tried my best through many lifetimes to serve God. My writings endured. Many of them were not necessarily correct, but they endured. Now I know the truth, the total truth, that I'm on the other side, and the answer is simplicity of message. Live a good life. It's almost that simple. So thank you for having me. I enjoyed speaking to you. Pass on the words of God. They're very important, especially in your times. As we watch from over here, we're incredibly saddened by what is taking place. Try to do good, lead others, and hopefully things will improve for everyone. So goodbye. Thank you for having me. If you want me to speak again, I would be more than happy to do so. There you go.
Yeah.
He is one of the great Christian writers. Had a huge influence. And he also understands that he did not understand a lot of things properly. But today he speaks with incredible clarity.
I've got a feeling that he and I are going to be friends. Everything that he said here is basically it's the foundation of the ministry that I'm trying to start. Everything is, yeah, it's weird. I was sitting here I'm like, trying to listen to this. I was like, whoa, this is exactly what I'm trying to do.
No, Augustine's the real deal. He's one of my writing guides. He helps me write. So next week, we are going to have a visit from an archangel.
Okay.
Azrael, the angel of death, is going to come to us next week with his messages.
Yes,
he is not sinister. He just simply helps your soul in passing.
Yeah.
So there'll be a little change of pace next week.
Yeah.
Okay. So goodbye. I'll talk to you next week.
See you next week. And there you have it, a great message from St. Augustine. And like I was saying, it, everything that he was saying today, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I I founded this ministry that I'm working on. Now I'm kind of doing it all on my own with Barry's help, of course. Uh, but this is everything that I want to do. Um, I want to teach the words of Jesus, but I don't want to teach them in the manner that the church does. I want to find out the direct message, and that's what I want to put across. Um, Everything that I do in this ministry, I want to be guided uh, by the Lord, not by man, not by my interpretation of the Bible or someone else's interpretation of the Bible. What I'm looking for is to get the true words of Jesus to the masses, to everybody. I want everybody to know the truth, how things really worked, how life works, how things happened. I'm actually very excited by St. Augustine's message, uh, and I'm hoping to. I got a lot of prayers I'm going to be doing, uh, but anyway, I'll get to all that later. Like I was saying earlier, I want to work on this teaching series to uh, kind of hammer down those messages. Some of the things, the concepts that we talk about during the show. Uh, I want to kind of expand on those a bit, and I'll do that on that other video series. Once I figure out how I'm going to do that, I'll need lesson plans and everything, and I want to do it right. So it's probably going to be it's not going to be a see you next week kind of thing. You know, it's going to take some time to develop it. But in the meantime, we'll keep going with what we've got now while I'm working on that, uh, and we'll we'll see where it goes. Uh, we're going to be talking with a lot of great spirits, and it's I just want to keep this show going. Uh, I'm getting kind of excited about it, if you can't tell. Uh, so until then, I'll keep working on things. You folks keep listening. Tune into our shows. Check us out on YouTube. Go to the website, eternity-speaks.com. And I'm working on that. That's another thing I'm developing. So that's kind of bear with me on everything. I'm kind of on my own here uh, for the most part for this end of it. So I'll keep working and you keep listening. Until then, God bless and see you next week.